So thank you all for joining this Service Coordinator or SC chat. We are hosting this one because, as you all know, today is a big day for Virginia ITC with launching, fully launching TRAC-IT. So we wanted to provide a space for all of you service coordinators who are entering data into TRAC-IT to have an opportunity and a space just to ask questions and share strategies and learn strategies to help make your experience with TRAC-IT fluid and positive if it already isn't. I am Lorelei Pisha. I'm with the Virginia Early Intervention Professional Development Center, and I'm here today with Stacie Jackson, who wears many hats, and one of those is service coordinator. And she and her system have had a lot of experience with entering data into TRAC-IT. So she agreed to join us and share some of that with you and be able to field some of your questions for those of you who maybe are just getting started or who could use a little bit more support. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Stacie now.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. As Lorelei mentioned, I've been the local system manager here in Staunton-Waynesboro since 2010. Our CSB went through a restructure this summer, and so as part of that, I continue in the local system manager role, but I have now also taken on the role of assistant director for DD services. So it's really kind of a nice blend as we work with birth to 3. Now it expands really a person's entire lifetime with services that can be offered. So we did start with TRAC-IT about 1.5 years ago when it launched. So we've had some different experiences and have been using it for quite a while. So when Lorelei reached out, I thought, well, that's a perfect time to share some of what we know and what we've learned. Prior to coming to early intervention, I was a elementary preschool teacher and principal. So accepted children or welcomed children into our building and into my classroom from the early intervention system. I'm also a parent of 3 now almost grown children. My 21-year-old was in early intervention in Maryland for several years due to speech apraxia that he was diagnosed with. So prior to taking this job as a local system manager, I had done it as a parent and as an educator. Also, everybody in our system is a blended role. So all our service coordinators, as well as we have a nurse and we have developmental services through teachers that are their blended role. And so thinking about where everybody is, let's try this stamp activity. If you're not familiar with how to find your stamps, if you hover over the top of your screen, you'll see a button that says View Options. If you click on the little caret next to it, you'll see an option to annotate. And when you click there, it will give you an option for stamps. So if you would bring up your stamps and just share with us a little bit about your comfort level right now with information in TRAC-IT. Anywhere from uncomfortable to really confident. Good. Looks like we've got a lot of people comfortable. Folks making progress. You know, anytime there's a change, change can be a challenge. Good. Good. It looks like most folks are feeling pretty comfortable, so we'll talk some about those things. And we've got others that maybe have spent more time in the system and others that have spent a little less time in the system. So let's see what we can do with that. So in order to be able to turn your stamps off, go back up if you would, under the view options and annotate. And if you click on it again, isn't that right, Lorelei? If you click on annotate again, it'll turn your stamp off. All right. So as everybody knows by now, there are really two different ways to be using TRAC-IT. If you are part of a system that is in the process or have started an EHR upload today or in the coming couple of weeks, that is a piece. The other aspect is if you do direct entry. For us here at Valley, we did a hybrid model in that when this first started a year and a half ago, we have Credible as our EHR. And at that time, the upload, we didn't have the staff or the financial resources in order to make that EHR upload work. And so we approached it from the standpoint of what's the most efficient way that we can use this with putting the bulk of the information into one system one time. So the child's full record for us is in TRAC-IT. What we did with Credible, partly because of, well, mainly because of the billing, we opened the child in Credible and put just enough information in Credible for billing to occur. So it's the diagnosis, it's the demographic information, and then when folks do a service, they document it in TRAC-IT, but they enter the actual service, the date, the time in and time out in Credible, because that's the part that's going to bill. If we need to send a note or if a note is requested or a plan, that is all in TRAC-IT and it can be pulled out of TRAC-IT that way. One of the things that we'll talk about too is we involved multiple departments in our agency. Again, we're at a community services board with TRAC-IT. So our reimbursement department is able to pull reports. Or if there's a question that an insurance company needs a note, our medical records department or our reimbursement department can pull that note and send it. So having multiple departments being familiar with TRAC-IT was a huge piece for us in helping to get all this on the up and running. So thinking along that, let's take a minute and consider what questions are you all finding at this point? I know on our stamp activity earlier, it went from making progress to feeling confident. Are there any questions that come to mind initially?
We can gather those questions in the chat if you all would like to share. So maybe some of the reasons that brought you here to this SC chat.
I think that's a really helpful point, Lorelei. One of the pieces was when we talked about this, it was trying to get a sense of kind of lessons learned for us or things that we discovered that may be beneficial to other systems as you're getting more fully into it. Okay, it looks like people are okay at the moment. So let's go back to annotate. Yep. And let's use the stamp system. And what is it that you all on the call are doing? What are your systems doing? Are you doing direct entry into TRAC-IT, meaning you're not using any other system? Are you using the EHR upload? Or are you doing kind of like what we did with a hybrid of minimal in your EHR and the bulk of your information is in TRAC-IT? It looks like most folks are doing a hybrid. I'm going to take a jump and make the leap that has to do with the billing, similar to what we ran into. All right, great.
Okay. Don't forget to close the X to close out of annotate as we move to the next slide. Although it looks like we still have a couple folks coming in. Maybe now it looks like a pretty good balance between direct entry and the hybrid.
Good. That just seemed to be one that worked really well for us without folks feeling like it was double entry across the board. I see a question in chat about documenting how someone participated. So we'll get to that piece. And I guess I'm going to need a little clarification. Are you talking about how someone participated like an assessment or an IFSP meeting?
And Marcy, feel free to unmute if you'd rather give more information that way, but chat's fine too, whatever your comfort is. So assessment or IFSP meeting.
So if the person is there, they will be documented as part of that meeting because they were invited. And if you're invited when you schedule that meeting, then your name will auto-populate into that portion of the IFSP writing. It will also generate a note. So if you're listed that way, then the understanding is that you were there in person. Recently, there's been a refining in the, trying to think if it's in the note. It could be in the note, it could be on the document, and you'll see where there's an information box that has a drop down of in writing or how you participated if it was other than in person. So that's been made clearer just in the last week, so you'll see a difference there. One of the things that we talked about in looking at this as well is kind of what were the strategies that we used for getting comfortable with TRAC-IT and how this works. Our struggle initially was that the lingo is different. How you talk about things in your EHR is different than how you talk about things in TRAC-IT. So it's a matter of being really comfortable and thinking about what is different between the task list and the child's actual record. The longer a child is in Credible, as you all the longer a child is in TRAC-IT, you will see the task list becomes very, very long. And so that is a matter of, you can sort then by opened or closed. So you're not looking at all these tasks at one time. The other piece to think about is, not being afraid to ask for help. I know initially we were hesitant to call the help desk or hesitant to call other systems because, nobody wants to look like, that's been said, but I still don't understand it. But people are so wonderful about working through this TRAC-IT transition. And other systems, we relied a lot on other systems and would call each other with questions. And where we are in the state, in our region, it's not uncommon for local system managers to shoot out a question to other local system managers or to service coordinators to reach out to others in other systems because of that piece of as we go through transitions, there are days that the help desk is busier and you may have to leave a message or you may have to send an email. I think the other piece is, are folks familiar with where the quick reference guides are in TRAC-IT? And those are updated. As we get updates from the state, you'll notice those are updated as well. So again, this is a pretend client in our system, but just thinking about where you are and understanding the different aspects of TRAC-IT. At any point, this blue ribbon is always on the page. So if you're in the middle of a session or an activity with a family and you can't remember how to do something, this help button right here is one that, again, it makes things very helpful. These dashboard specific information lays out what different roles, different user roles in TRAC-IT have and what they can access. These quick reference guides, we use these a lot. And these get updated as changes are made. So if you're just trying to figure out an ASP task or an eligibility determination, you can use these quick reference guides as a quick way to refresh your memory or check if you get stuck. And again, the nice thing is this blue ribbon doesn't ever go away. Speaking about the roles and the dashboard, that is an aspect that's different. At least it was for us. I know different EHRs have different ways of doing things, but typically what we've done is we had to think about who's going to need to access what in the system, which when we brought in other departments, we had to give them roles. But we also found out, for instance, with our service coordinators, all our service coordinators, as I mentioned, are dual certified. So they have multiple roles. So because that gives them different access to different parts of a child's record. So again, thinking about what your different roles are. So here's the task list that we talked about. These are all the tasks that have ever been completed or scheduled for this particular pretend client. This is the task status bar I mentioned. I know 2 of our service coordinators really struggle and are not comfortable looking at this whole list of things that have to be done. Other folks have gotten used to it. So again, if you only want to look at tasks that need to be completed, then you would just choose the open. And then any task that has been completed drops off your screen. It's still there, but it's not on your screen anymore. Or if you're checking to make sure you have done something, you can choose closed. And when you do, again, for this child, these are the tasks that have been completed for this child. So going back to the whole user role idea, the insurance confirmation task has to be completed in order for insurance to populate into the child's record. So again, different way of thinking. This is your task list. These are things that are upcoming to be done. Down at the bottom of your screen is where you're actually in the child's record. So if I click on this insurance tab here, there is no insurance information listed, even though I've put in this case, a fake Medicaid number. The reason nothing populates here is because this insurance confirmation task has not been completed. This is where our service coordinators can do it. But in order to do that, in order to do the insurance confirmation, you have to be given the user role of insurance. So all of our service coordinators have the EI insurance role. Different systems set it up differently. But once that comes up and I can claim it, then I have my information. And when I click this create insurance record, you can create the insurance record. Again, it takes you back to your page. And if you scroll down into the record, now you have the insurance information. So that's where the user role piece comes in for us. And that was a matter of something that once you can't figure something out, one of the first things you can look at is, do I have the user role to complete it? So that being said, the other piece, again, not knowing where folks on the call are. So again, what we did was when TRAC-IT went live a 1.5 years ago, we reserved 2 days where all of our staff, all our service coordinators, as well as other staff in the CSB, worked together to enter all the information so that it was all into the system at once. We didn't divide it out by whose children. We did it by stations. So one station was entering goals, one station was entering services, one station would be entering the last date of the physician cert or the health status questions. Again, so that all of our children at the end of the 2 days had all the information uploaded into their file so that everybody can begin, documenting information in there. So, we also found it was one of those things that when we started with TRAC-IT, it made sense when you were sitting in your office or in your workspace on your own. Then when you get out with the family, there was that momentary, wait, I can't remember how I did this. So this is where I chuckle in reminding people to breathe deeply. It can be fixed. It can be, it can always be fixed. It can be done on paper and then entered into the system. You know, it can be managed. One of the experiences I had, that I see Richard's on the call, that I sent an email to he and Kyla at the time. I was in a home sitting on the floor, as so many of us do. I have the computer in my lap. I've got our assessment team there. We're working with an infant. The 4-year-old that's there has been just a pleasure the entire hour we've been there so far. And he was playing in the other room. We're talking with mom, we're working on goals, and all of a sudden this 4-year-old decides he can jump over me like a hurdle. Well, God loves the little guy. He didn't get his feet high enough in the air to get over me, so knocked me over, sent the computer flying, lost the page I was on in TRAC-IT. And there was that momentary panic of all this information that I've been entering is gone. And so I reached out after the fact, was able to pull some of it back up, but also reached out after the fact to the help desk. And because I had hit save throughout the process, they were able to bring the plan back up to the point of the last place that I had hit save. So again, we all know just when you think you've seen it all, something happens and you haven't. But just remember, it's a computer and it's a process, and you'll get it. You really will. And the help desk really can be helpful with that. And when in doubt, hit save all the time.
That's the moral I was just going to suggest. When in doubt, hit save. Stacie, you do have some questions coming in. Do you want to pause for a moment? And
yep, that's great.
All right, so we did have a clarification. Marcy, the question you were talking about before about how to indicate that a person was present. And she was talking about the IFSP meeting. She said then, so we don't use the drop-down box unless they were not there in person.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So Beth has a question for us. She says when sending in when sending in a physical certificate, do we need to include the addendum and transition pages?
So I think Beth, I'm looking, all right, so a school referral.
No, I'm sorry. It wasn't a school referral. I mistyped. Physician certification.
Physician certification. Sorry, I couldn't. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. All right, so Beth, go ahead and tell me your question again. With the physician certification.
Right. So right now, when a kid initially comes in, I'm not filling out all of the transition pages because it prints out a lot of blank forms. So I had been taking that out, and then I didn't know when I'm sending in a physician certification for the pediatrician to sign off on, do they need those pages? And do they also need the addendum because the services that the child's going to receive is already embedded in the IFSP?
I think from a system perspective, I would double check because really the process of sending information to physicians, just because we now do it in TRAC-IT, doesn't need to change. So I know in our system, we do send the full IFSP and the addendum with the physician cert to the physicians. We don't send the transition pages, especially as you noted, when you print in TRAC-IT, it prints everything in those transition pages print, even if you haven't started transition. So we don't typically send those to the pediatricians or the doctors with our physician certification.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great question, Beth. Thank you. We have a question from Lily. Lily, would you like to unmute and share your question?
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm kind of out in the boonies.
Good.
Good.
I can hear you great.
My question, our system, we are also dual role, our service coordinators, like you said, Stacie. And my question is about writing notes, especially for IFSPs and ASPs. When I put in, now that you can, like for me, I can put in Lily Dean, and check service coordinator and check developmental specialist. The problem I'm having is that it's still generating either only one service coordination note or two service coordination notes. And so we've kind of been doing a hodgepodge. Some people will put what they did as both roles on OneNote. Other people will open like an ad hoc contact note to document their EIP role. Kind of, how are you guys doing that? I'm just curious.
Okay, so what we found is the issue being, and Richard, jump in if I misspeak on this with a recent update. What the issue has been is how it shows up on your billing extract to ensure that when you're in a dual role, you need to be able to bill for your assessment time as well as bill for your IFSP time. So what we have done is when you go to do an initial, you will get a contact note for the assessment and a contact note for the IFSP. What we typically do, because that's been our process now, is the contact note for the assessment only for the individual that's the dual certified role. We open that and use not needed, because what happens there is typically it only shows on the billing extract as a service coordination activity. So then we do an ad hoc task where you add contact note and we record the assessment information and time on that note. Then when you complete the IFSP note, that is in your role as service coordinator. That's where we document our service coordinator activities with that. As far as how much information you put in each note, you can write the detail in one note and reference the other, making sure that if those records were audited, the person that's auditing knows exactly where to be looking to get the full narrative of what happened. But typically, we have to put in the two notes because of the billing. We want it to show for billing at the assessment and billing at the IFSP meeting.
Does that make good sense to you, Lily? Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, I think that's great. We're also using Credible for our EHR, so I already sent a note to my LSM to let her know that, hey, there's some other ones that are in the same boat, so.
Yeah. And there's quite a few of us. So, yep, absolutely reaching out. I was trying to think, there was one other piece I was going to tell you about that, and then I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It looks like there's another question.
This one looks like Terry's giving you a shout out is the last.
Oh, aren't you so good, Terry? Yeah, see, I'll send you that check for being so kind to me in the mail. It's in the mail. I was trying to look too at notes that I had. Our folks, and I don't know what's the best way to get at this. Maybe it's just to ask you all a question. Is everybody comfortable with how the whole aspect works of the different parts of the page? So the enrollment information, the task list, and the record. Maybe it's just a thumbs up. Are people comfortable with how that all works?
I know that like I have a problem even finding like where did the address go, like, and profile information, unless I'm opening up the IFSP. So I don't know if that is somewhere else in the system more easily accessible.
All right, so here we are back in this child's file. We're going through the task list. What you can do, Beth, is come down here to the parent and guardian information. And I know they have these lovely blue arrows. You can use the blue arrows, or you can check anywhere in this box and it will bring up that information that you're looking for.
Okay, great, thanks.
The other piece to think about, Again, learned it the hard way. Going back to the question earlier about the addendum and the transition pages to the pediatrician. Well, I didn't think anything of it. Once we wrote an IFSP, if we needed to print out the IFSP, we would come down here to the child's record, click on the IFSP button, and up here, had this IFSP been written, there would have been a link to it. I didn't think anything about it, and those were the ones we were printing. But what happens is the addendum doesn't print with that. So if you haven't noticed that, and you're printing from the IFSP, when you send it to the pediatrician, the addendum isn't there. You'll want to go here to the documents. And again, if I had just written the IFSP, you'll see a blue hyperlink for the IFSP and a blue hyperlink for the addendum. Oh, I know what I was thinking of. Lily Dean mentioned it when she asked about that dual role. One of the things that we did when we first started, so that folks could be more comfortable, is if the family agreed and was comfortable with it, and we were very upfront about why we were asking, we didn't do a lot of dual roles the first month or two that we were in TRAC-IT. We tried to take a team of 2 so that the service coordinator was just focusing on working with the family and the team to develop the plan while managing the different aspects in TRAC-IT that she or he needed to do. And then you had the 2 other folks that were there doing the assessment. Once we got very comfortable with navigating through the IFSP, we went back to conversations and thinking about, do we need, a team of 3, or can 2 people do it? Can a dual role be that? And that was a helpful piece for staff, because then you really just had to focus on what you needed to get, and how you can engage and what kind of questions you were talking with the family about in order to capture it into TRAC-IT, rather than trying to do both. Any other, looking for other questions folks have before? Okay, so this, I think this is one, thinking about, okay, now I've got the general basics and the foundation of TRAC-IT. I'm comfortable moving around. It's that piece of, is it as intuitive as I want it to be with the way my EHR was? For us, that was a struggle, because we were very used to how our EHR was structured and how we could group things together. And so that was a bit of a change for us. And figuring out when different things populate, different tasks populate when they don't auto-populate. So before leaving today, we'll talk a little bit about that. I think there, you can go ahead and advance that slide. All right, so now let's think about, from the standpoint of, I'm familiar with it, and then you can go to that next slide, Lorelei. Another piece that we had to figure out was, in our minds, we knew the process. We knew the process on paper. We knew the process in our EHR because we'd become very familiar with it. With TRAC-IT, the process is there, but it can look a little different, and how different tasks in that process show up. So just making sure ahead of time, during a meeting or a visit, and then afterwards, that you're recognizing that you may need some additional time to get these pieces taken care of. One of the nice pieces about TRAC-IT is when you do the intake visit and you're filling out information in the outcome areas and the family's priorities, and all of those things then populate right into the IFSP. So prior to going to an IFSP meeting, especially an initial one, we found that we save time, because in typing it in the intake visit, taking the time there to get the information in, it saved us time in putting some of that information into the draft IFSP previously. But again, just remember, if you know that it takes an hour or an hour and a half to get ready for an initial meeting, then give yourself an extra 15, 20 minutes so that you're very comfortable with how you walk through that process. Because all those tasks will populate, but some of them you can complete ahead of others and some of them you can't. So even though they're all there, they have to be completed and checked as completed in order to move on. So keeping that in mind. The other piece we talked about involving other departments. And again, I realize that's a conversation with your local system manager, but we found it to be really helpful. And again, folks are willing to learn, partly because, you know, if they're not having to wait on me to pull a note and they can pull a note and send it to the insurance, that gets it off everybody's to-do list. As Terry was teasing me in the chat about the positives, truly, you all, there are, I think about when we went to Credible, there were some aspects of Credible that drove us all bananas and we hate it. But as you become more familiar with the system, it became easier to use, partly because it was just more familiar. TRAC-IT has the same aspect to it of once you learn it, you can navigate it well. But it also has some additional positives that we don't have with our EHR. One of those being what we call in our system the blue buttons, the infamous blue buttons. They save a lot of time in the past where we had to write out a narrative of a note. For instance, if a family canceled a visit, and Lorelei, I'll go ahead and share my screen again.
Okay.
So for instance, up here, if this intake visit, if you were all set to go and the family canceled, now you're not opening up a note to write this long-winded cancellation. You can scroll down here into the task. And we do it two ways, partly because we think of it as killing two birds with one stone. This communication log detail field is always in the different tasks. And anything you type in that communication log detail will automatically show in the communication log. So in this case, let's say the family texted that morning to cancel the visit. You texted back and forth and you were able to spell and reschedule for 12/15. All right. Once I hit family cancel, and I've put this in the log detail, two things happen. You automatically come back to a schedule and intake visit. This is what generates your confirmation. You simply put in when you're going, who's going to be there, again, communication log detail. I don't need anything in there because I've already said I'm going, this is the date. I'll complete it. It takes me back to my task list and you'll see my intake visit is here for the 15th and all these other pieces continue to be present that you need for your intake. But then when you scroll down into the child's record and go to the communication log, you'll now see where today it was an initial appointment. The family canceled. Here's the blue button. And here's the information that I put in the communication log detail. So it becomes very easy to sort this as we go down the road to see how many times have we canceled or how many speech sessions have we had, those kinds of things, because you can sort by these bolded headings. So that for us, the blue buttons and this communication log have been huge for us in terms of facilitating a more efficient way of making notes. We use the communication log anytime we make contact with the family that is a non-bill service. So for instance, especially you service coordinators that are maybe the intake service coordinator, and you make a phone call to a family, you can come down here to the communication log, click create, enter the information, and then you'll see it's here. So again, if you're out, or if you're not able to do a follow-up call and one of your colleagues does it for you, they can look here to see, oh, well, I know Stacie already called on the 11th. Today's the 15th. I'll give them another call again. Again, that's another aspect that has been really helpful. And anytime we do a non-billable service, we will just document it here versus scheduling and completing a service coordination contact note, which in our EHR was the only way to do that. The other aspect is no longer do you have this 50-page fax that comes to you when children transfer into your system. You're able to go back and see what other systems has a child been enrolled in. You can know at a glance how many referrals they've had.
Action, Cindy speaking. Can I help you?
So I see Andrea's got a hand up. If you want to unmute Andrea.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the communication log. So add the communication, like the note, but I want to know, like, how can we edit without calling the health department, the health support? Because I messed up with one detail, and then I wasn't able to go back.
Like outpatient? Mm-hmm.
Was
Okay.
in a communication
I can
log.
send
Just a
you
moment. It sounds
a
like
list of the
somebody is
outpatient
not
providers in the
muted. So
area.
I'm just going to go ahead and
So you
mute
can pick
all,
which
and then
one
you can
your
undo
your insurance.
yourself, Andrea and Stacie.
I'm sorry, say that again.
All right. You're unmuted. And Stacie, are you unmuted now? Apologies. It sounds like somebody was unmuted and they were sharing some sensitive information. So I wanted to.
Yep. Nope. That's great.
Okay, go ahead.
So in looking, Andrea, I don't know that the communication log itself can be edited. If you now service coordinator notes or provider notes can be edited by the individual that wrote them, but I don't know that the logs can be. Richard, jump in if you know something different, but just looking, when you click on it in order to go in, I don't see any kind of edit button, and usually there's an edit button up here.
Yeah, like that's what I meant. Like if you put your note and let's say you want to add more information to the note later on, you're not able to do it. Like, do you have any way to do that?
So like into a service coordination note?
Into the communication log that you were doing it a little bit ago.
No, I don't think you can. I think what I would do in this instance is you can either add a second. Again, I think you have to remember too, the communication log is really short. It's kind of that explanation or that documentation of a task that was done, but it's not, or at least we don't use it for anything that has quite a bit of information. If you need a note with more information, we would generally put it under the service coordination note.
Okay, thanks.
While we're here, Stacie, we have a question from Beth. Beth, do you want to unmute and ask?
Sure. So our locality was getting a little confused about the difference between the communication log and the contact notes. And so we weren't really going to use the communication log and just put everything in contact notes. Is there any downside to doing that?
From a system perspective, I would say no, because again, you're documenting that information. I think where it comes into play is for like these examples on the screen, that communication log, as long as the activity is a non-bill, a lot of times the communication log can be faster than needing to schedule an ad hoc service coordination task and work through all the pieces of the service coordination note. But policy-wise, again, Richard, or jump in, as long as the information is documented, it's fine to do it all in a contact note.
I'll jump in. There's no requirement to use the communication log that I'm aware of. It is meant to be a quick and easy tool. And so if your local workflow is such that you don't wish to use it or will not be consistently using it among all staff, to the best of my knowledge, that is fine.
Okay, yeah, I guess, so it sounds like for billable things, you're making contact notes. For non-billables, you're using the communication log. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is one, that would certainly be one approach. If that were, I mean, I know you have the option when you do a contact note, you can have the option to mark it as unbillable. So, that's a way of having to avoid, forgetting to uncheck a box or something.
Okay.
But yeah, I think whatever you all do, as a locality decide, you just want to make it your standardized practice, should be fine.
Okay. And again, we're really new. We haven't done a lot of contact notes. I liked when we were going over how it has that, communication type and the outcome of communication. I assume contact notes do not have that same kind of thing. Is that correct?
Well, let me show you. So if we're thinking about a service coordination contact note, so a service coordination note has a bit more detail that we're looking for. Let me see if we can just do this quickly. So what you could do, again, you've got the communication log detail. You can put, so then scrolling back down to the record, you're going to look in contact notes. And it doesn't have, in order to see the full piece of what happened in contact notes, you're going to need to open them to get to the narrative.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Okay, sure. Got two other things I just wanted to mention. One of the pieces, thinking about children from transferring into your system, remember up here in the header under the TRAC-IT ID, for instance, if this was a third referral, whether it was to me or any other infant toddler system, this number, when I open them, would come up as 03. So that can be your indication that, oh, there may be some other records somewhere for another child or for this child from another system. So that's one way you can look. And then once that's the case, in order to access a child's records, you do it here on this enrollment section of your page. The other piece that I'll share this tip that I have not tried, but 2 of our speech therapists have found that they really like. We have not done a lot in our system with the offline functionality of TRAC-IT. But what our speech therapist found recently is if they log into TRAC-IT on their phone, just as if they were going through the browser like they normally would, scroll down to the narrative portion of their note, they can dictate on their phone just as if they were dictating an email, and it will dictate into the narrative portion on the note. So as you're finishing at a house before you head to your next appointment, what they do is they stay for 5 minutes in that parking lot, they dictate some of the highlights, and then they save it. So then when they go back to their note later, there's information in there. They're just checking, adding to it, that sort of thing, and then completing it. But that dictation piece they have found to be really helpful. We have often dictated notes to ourselves in our email because that way it's encrypted information, and then we'll copy and paste that email into a note. But a couple of our speech therapists were like, no, now I can just put it right in the system. So again, something to try. Make sure you practice it and see if it works, just so that you're comfortable with it. But so that was another piece that we were not able to do in our Incredible. So any other? I'll stop sharing.
Well, we are coming to the close of our hour together. So Stacie and Richard or Terry, is there anything else that you all would like, anything that comes to mind as you've been listening to questions and looking at the system?
Well, if I may, I have a couple of things I've jotted down that I would like to share real quickly.
Right.
The first off is a thank you to service coordinators. Your job is important and difficult, and we appreciate everything you do. Please know that TRAC-IT has been designed to support you and to help you succeed by trying to anticipate all of the little parts and pieces that make up a child's time with us, and trying to ensure that all the T's and get crossed and all the I's get dotted. So it's not a perfect system, but as we continue to use it, we will be looking at enhancements as time goes on. So I encourage you, if you run into something that just makes no sense and you're like, it'd be so much better this way, do reach out to the help desk, putting in a ticket, and that goes on an enhancement tracker. And we have over 100 enhancement requests. So we're always looking at them and trying to prioritize and figure out how we can spend our money and our time wisely. The help desk staff are fabulous. I talk to one or all of them every week, multiple times, super helpful, super patient, and they're there to support you. I will say real quickly, do not reach out to the help desk if it's a policy question. Check in with your LSM or check in with your TA provider at the state, because while there are some things that are weird or strange about using TRAC-IT, in essence, the policies that we follow for early intervention have not changed. We will be updating the practice manual next year to reflect TRAC-IT, and where there have been times when TRAC-IT has slightly dictated how we do something, that will be updated so that the process is more clear. But again, the policies for the most part will not be changed. And my last thing to say is thank you, Stacie. You are a gift to the system, and you just share your knowledge, and it's just great. And people, we're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have all of you, but I'm just calling out Stacie right now.
Thank you, Richard. Well, and just before we go, I saw there's a question from Wilhelmina about non-billable notes. So it sounds like you're doing a hybrid model. You're going to do non-billable notes Incredible. Do you have to put them in the communication log in TRAC-IT? Richard, I'm thinking if it's non-billable, it wouldn't have to be in TRAC-IT as part of the record, right?
I think that's something I'd rather just take back. My hunch would be no, it's fine, because we're trying to have as much flexibility as people who are using a hybrid model, but I wouldn't want to go on record as saying that. So, Wilhelmina, would you mind let me just copy and paste that, and I'll find out where you work from somebody so I can get an answer to you.
Well, and Wilhelmina, thinking about that, depending on, what the answer to that is, or the guidance that you all receive from that is, I think one of the pieces when you use a hybrid model that we have to think about is, where is it most efficient to record the information, whether it's in the EHR or whether it's in TRAC-IT, in this case for a non-billable note. Where does it make the most sense that gives folks the easiest access to figure out, if they're looking for information about a non-billable note, or if they're looking to see how many times someone has been contacted, those kinds of things. So again, talk with your system after you get some guidance. But that may be the question to ask, where does it just make the most sense? And then that will help y'all answer.
And Terry jumped in to say she agrees with Stacie. As you use TRAC-IT, it makes sense that the complete record is in TRAC-IT, especially for communication across the system. So thanks for weighing in there, Terry. And then Wilhelmina, you can look out for some more information coming from Richard at a later date. Everyone, thank you so much for joining for today. And again, Stacie, hats off. I know this was a big ask, you all, too, this time of year. And Stacie definitely showed up for it. So appreciated. And please look out in your inbox for the evaluation, and that way you can get your certificate for participating today. And then also, as always, please email myself, Corey, or Lisa to let us know what other topics you'd like to have. We host these SC chats every quarter, and we want to make sure that the topics are coming from you all. And so we'd love to hear from you. All right, you all, if we don't see you before break, wonderful winter break. And again, thanks to everyone for coming and participating.
Thanks, everybody.